and apparel, edible oils, meat and leather, while also drawing lessons for Africa at large. I will start with His Excellency, Dr. William Ruto. Mr. President, you've been pushing for more special economic zones in Kenya. How do those special economic zones fit into your administration's better priority, in particular in terms of job creation?
Thank you very much, Mr. Hort, and welcome to Kenya. And welcome my friend and brother Benedict Orama, my good friend Gagan Gupta there, and our friend who is also a board member at Arise, and to all the other investors in this room and Kenyans. Special economic zones is a tool and a platform we want to use to achieve three things. Number one, as you have heard from Gagan, we import huge amounts of leather, textiles, and many other products that we can actually manufacture out of Kenya. How do we stop Kenya from being a destination for imports? How do we flip it from being an exporter of raw materials and instead process, add value, create value out of the very products that in their raw form and instead process, add value, create value out of the very products that in their raw form would not give us as one, so that we can process, we can add value to our textiles, our leather, and many of the other products that even our tea, for example, we still export 95% of our tea in sacks, you know? Other countries export their tea in sachets, processed, value added. Special economic zones is the place where we want to use to add value to all the products we produce in Kenya. From tea, to coffee, to leather, to textiles, and on and on. Already, some of the policy interventions that we have put in place, and I will talk about them later, is for us to be able to create the correct fiscal and financial ecosystem to support this exercise. So it's for purposes of processing and adding value to our products. And much more importantly, is for us to create jobs for the young people. We have a big youth bulge, educated. We spend close to 650 billion Kenya shillings, about $5 billion every year, to educate our young people. We push into the job market 1 million young people every year. And as we train them, as we spend money in teaching, training, and educating our young people, we must equally think about the pipeline. When they come out of school, out of college, out of university, what do they do? So special economic zones speaks to the answer of creating jobs, creating value, and making sure that we become an export of finished products and not raw materials. So it is, special economic zones is at the heart of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, where we are looking at the millions of young people who do not have jobs at the bottom of the pyramid, the many farmers who get stranded with their cotton, with their tea, with their coffee, where they have to sell with prices that do not add value to what they are doing. That is our overall agenda.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. President. We heard you loud and clear. The government has the vision, made the public investments, both educating people, and the government wants to add more value and create jobs. Now, let me ask you to President Orama the following question. You heard, Mr. President, and the government is committed, is doing investment. What Afri-Exim Bank can do, not only for Kenya, but also for the industries that will be positioning themselves into these special economic zones. We know that Afri-Exim has been at the far front of Africa's industrialization and trade. In particular, personally, over the last 10 years, you've moved mountains and disbursed tens of billions of dollars to support the continent. What can we do to support further Kenya, but also the industries coming into the zones? Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Amadou. The strategy we established when I became president had 4 key pillars. 3 are important here. One of them is industrialization and export development. The other key one is intra-African trade and AfCFTA promotion, all linked. When we set up this strategy, or before we did that, we studied the industrial landscape, what ought to be done for us to be able to make any impact. We found that a key issue for industries in Africa is infrastructure that will make sure they produce competitively. So we knew that the answer to that is what others had done, especially China and others, is to build industrial zones, special economic zones, because that would be the fastest way of dealing with the infrastructure problem and then set the pace for expanding the good infrastructure to the rest of the economy. If you wanted to wait for the investments that will go through the economy so that everywhere is good for industrialization, you wait for too long, because Africa required about, at that time, about $110 billion every year for the 10 years to be able to build the infrastructure it needed. Africa did not have that money. So we knew the industrial parks would be the way to go. But we also knew that to attract anybody to the industrial parks, we needed to have a comprehensive solution. It's not just building the infrastructure, but also making sure that you provide all the facilities and assistance that will make somebody coming there to focus on producing. Because what we normally see on the continent is that people come there, they have so many other things to contend with, which are not related to their main core business. But we also recognize that to do industrial parks, after doing the survey, we needed somebody who knew how to do those things. Luckily, since 2010, we had been working with Arise, providing loans, and we saw what they had done successfully in Gabon, and also starting then to do in Benin. So we decided that the best thing was to do a partnership. But beyond that partnership, we had to provide other solutions. And those other solutions meant we had to make sure that anybody coming to those industrial parks had to have the money to complement the equity they provide. We had to also be able to have an equity fund that is not scared of Africa, that will go along with them, because we know that if you're telling somebody from China, from Kazakhstan to go to Africa to invest money, we have to first put our leg in the water. And that's what our fund was intended to do, to show them that we will not bring you where we will not go to. We also knew that trade finance was critical. That's our bread and butter. So we had to make it available, but make it in a specialized way. We then also knew that payment services, insurance services, and all those things were necessary, including a very important thing we always neglect, testing and inspection centers. And I forgot to mention it, Mr. President, we are going to build a testing and inspection center here to enable goods produced here to be tested and not to be sent to other continents where they are tested, so that producers spend 2 weeks waiting for results before they can export. We'll put an end to that. We're already doing that in other parts of Africa. So we need all of this, so that's this comprehensive solution we provide. And as I had discussed with the President, our President Back Office will come here to support these activities. We commit every year for the industrial park development about $3 billion every year in our plan. So, and then the other things, we do them in line with the specific objectives for the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Orama, for this insight. We'll come back to the other instruments that AfriExim can provide, in particular in gathering financing from other actors. I'll move to Professor Carlos Lopez, who also does not need any introduction. Professor Lopez, you've seen many successful industrial parks around the world, whether it's in Asia, Latin America, but you've seen also the failures. What do you think we should do to make sure that our industrial parks generate jobs and really enable us to create value? Thank you.
Thank you, Amadou. I have known Gagan since the time he was thinking about how to accelerate industrialization. And I was then leading the Economic Commission for Africa and putting a lot of effort on the conceptual reasons why Africa needed to accelerate industrialization. So let me use that question to talk about the why, the what, and the how. The why is because Africa has 35 countries in the category of highly commodity exporters dependency. That is the highest in the world, and it's basically a reproduction of the colonial model, where we will export commodities without transformation. So that reality hits us because after 6 decades of development efforts, it's very difficult to justify that we are still there. And one of the reasons is because our macroeconomic system, our policy environment is geared towards meeting external obligations, not real transformation. So we are always trying to find money to pay sovereign debts and so on. In fact, our debt to GDP ratio in general in Africa is about 60%, half of OECD countries. But the reason it's so difficult is because sources of revenue are extremely limited. To start with, we don't control the prices of our commodities. So therefore, our number one economic value is already hampered by the way the system works. So the only way we can get out of it is to industrialize. So that's the what. But the what needs a bit of definition. Precisely because of the experiments of the past, we are the latecomers. So we are the last ones to come to the party. And we have to learn not to be a landing strip, but a launching pad. And this is a very different prospect. If you are a landing strip, which is just going to incrementally do what you have learned from others. No. The moment requires a completely different take, requires a different way of doing industrialization. When you are a latecomer, you have a lot of problems. Your regulatory system is much more complex. Your access to capital more limited. The intellectual property regimes are not going to be favorable. You can go on with the list. not to mention your internal conditions, like your skill set, your infrastructure, your access to energy in particular, can all become real challenges that will not allow you to do proper industrialization. And that has been used as an excuse to keep pushing us, policy-wise, to be much more on diversification of the economy than industrialization. That's what we are told by the experts. So what is diversification? It can be, you diversify from cocoa to coffee or from tea to coffee. That's diversification. But it doesn't change structurally the economy. So how are we going to change it? And why do we need to change it? And that's the why. The why is because we need jobs. We need jobs. Now, creating jobs in the industrial sector nowadays is not an easy task. It requires a different approach. The first thing we have to learn from the mistakes of the past is that we need an ecosystem. And that's why Arise has integrated in its tagline. Yes, it needs to be an ecosystem because we need financial innovation, we need tech-savvy logistics, we need climate-smart interventions, we need a whole array of issues that are going to position us differently. And that's what is on offer. Now, you can look into the experiments of Asia, very successful, because they created within the special economic zones or industrial parks a sort of a propeller for a lot of activities around. Where you can look into Latin America, where most of the experiments were about just, incrementalism, not integrating with the value chain around the country, and therefore becoming a bit what in Mexico they call the maquiladoras, which is basically, you put the last touch, but you don't transform structurally. So we have to avoid those mistakes. And to avoid those mistakes, we need an integrated system. And that's what Arise has been successful in doing so far.
Thank you very much, Professor Lopez. We heard about the mistakes that we need to avoid. Arise has been able to do that over the last 14 years. Gagan, you've been very successful in Central Africa and West Africa. Now we are here in Kenya. How can we sort of scale today's project, replicate it in Kenya, but also across Africa? What kind of gaps do you see that governments and DFIs can step in to fill? Thank you.
Thanks, Amadou. I think I'll first start by saying the industrialization does not pass through just by people sitting here. The industrialization actually passes through all of you sitting here. And what I mean is, I think every time you buy some product, be it your ordinary toothpaste, be it your shoe, be it your clothes, be it anything you use, please ask yourself, are you buying something made in Africa or not? Because that is where the industrialization will start. So I think the first mentality that I want to really push through is that every day we should ask ourselves, are we buying made in Africa or not? And I'll use this forum to request President, maybe President, you need to mandate that twice a week, everybody should we are made in Kenya. So that everybody is forced to be made in Kenya, and that's how we drive the demand. Because I think all the time we think of exporting products, we need to think of what we can consume locally, made in locally. Very specifically, Amaru, to your question, I think from Arise perspective, when we look at developing an industrial ecosystem, what we really look at seeing is how can we ensure that we can produce goods competitively? And that competitive production comes because of multiple things. Availability of raw materials, so we ensure what the country has, which we can transform. Secondly, building all the infrastructure that makes it competitive. So ensuring the power is at right price, ensuring the utilities like effluent treatment is the right price. Thirdly, ensuring that we have trained manpower which is productive. So putting the vocational training center, so we have trained people, so when industries hire them, the productivity is right. And once you do all this, along with the strong marketing, you get a competitive ecosystem. And at the same time, we focus where the product is going to go. So for example, if we are, as we're talking about, we focus on textile in this industrial zone, because we know Kenya is a $2.2 billion import market. So you clearly have a market here. So when you start producing, it easily becomes, viable. Similarly, if you think of the Boda industry, 1.2+ million Boda officially. I mean, all of them are imported today. And to put in perspective, 1.2 million boda bodas represent roughly about $2.4 billion of product. Why we need to import that? If you think of fuel, and one of the investors are here, we import the fuel, but we have all the manpower we have. We can produce cassava or we can produce other feedstock, convert into bioethanol. And what the state needs to do, it has a 10% bioethanol policy or a biofuel policy. So suddenly you have decreased your FX bill, you have produced something which is locally given jobs. So Amadou, to summarize, we really think of industry, what is required for it to be competitive, bring all those elements along with the policy and the government framework, along with the financing to make it work.
Thank you very much, Gagan. Again, congratulations for this brilliant success. Mr. President, I'll come back to you on a particular question related to the stability of the investment environment, not only in Kenya, but is applicable to many parts of the world as well. When you're investing in this SEZ, you have particular policies, you commit capital. What sort of guarantees or commitments, Mr. President, you can give to investors that the policies will not change with every finance bill? We know our countries are under pressure to generate revenue. Some countries will change the policy to generate more revenue from the companies investing. What can you do, Mr. President, to give us more comfort to come to Kenya and stay for a long time?
Thank you very much. I think before I answer your question, it's good for me to put in context where the special economic zone ecosystem is in our overall, scheme of things. The single most pressing matter in this continent and in Kenya is how to create jobs. And it has been at the center of the drive we have in our bottom-up economic transformation agenda. From housing, which today has created close to 320,000 jobs, to the digital jobs ecosystem that we are working on, spreading the fiber optic network around Kenya, making sure that we have G2 centers, which are ICT hubs. So far in that space, including our BPO ecosystem in Kenya, we have close to 180,000 jobs created over the last 3 years. On to what we call labor mobility, structured labor mobility using bilateral labor agreements, making sure that we know if Kenyans are going to work abroad, where are they working, what kind of salaries are they earning, what kind of work environment are they working in, and if they are in trouble, how do we get back home? And then, of course, it comes down to our special economic zones program. The reason why initially we put our own money, apart from assigning and delineating areas for special economic zones, we put in the first 3 billion shillings to do the very basic infrastructure, which has been done. I think most of it is on its final stages. Then, earlier in my term, I decided that the government of Kenya was going to increase its shareholding in AfriExim. And it was deliberate, because we needed an institution with a financial muscle that we can leverage on to be able to invest in this space. And I must congratulate AfriExim Bank with their partners, Arise, that they have come through for Kenya. We invested $50 million. They gave us a $3 billion facility to be able to run our program.
That's a great investment.
And you can see it in action. When we came for this meeting last year with the governor of this county, Governor Mungaro, when we came here with Moria there, and we said we are going to move things in this direction, many people did not believe us. They thought it was the usual talk. Today, we have come here, already Arise, have put machines on the ground. We've launched the first phase. You've had Orama announce here that they have already made available $500 million, which is 65 billion shillings, to put the infrastructure here in Vipingo Special Economic Zone, infrastructure in Dongo Kundu, and infrastructure in Naivasha. All that space is going to create new opportunities. It's going to create new opportunities for jobs, for adding value to our products, and for making Kenya a net exporter of finished products. And we begin to reduce our imports. And that is the trajectory we are looking at. You have asked me a specific question. What is it that we are doing as government to make sure that we are predictable? That it is not going to be a game of guesswork by the investors who are here. And I want to tell the investors here, who are here, we made a deliberate decision. The reason why we are setting up special economic zones is because we have legislation that protects investors that come into these special economic zones. We have made a determination that we will have a 5-year cycle of policy, so that at the very least, you know that as you invest in this space, you have 5 years before there is any discussion on change of any policy in this ecosystem. And number two, we have also made policy decisions, including reducing some of the taxes of some of the materials that will be required for manufacturing. For example, we have removed duties on imports of paper that will be used for manufacturing of tea products, coffee products, export products. We are looking at other interventions, and we are discussing with industry. We have a robust conversation with industry. How is it that we are going to make it easier for companies, for industrialists to invest in the special economic zone, even as we work on setting it up? We have also looked at how are we going to have energy security. We are having a conversation as Kenyans that the 2,300 megawatts is not anything we can even tell anybody. We are having a robust conversation now how we are going to have 10,000 megawatts at the very least, so that our investors in our special economic zones and in other parts of our economy know that there is energy security and predictability. We are looking at deploying infrastructure. As Arise is putting up infrastructure in Vipingo Special Economic Zone, the government of Kenya is dualing the road from Mombasa, coming this way. As you can see, there is already a lot of work in that direction so that we can provide easier mobility in that space. We're looking at how to extend the railway to Uganda. We're looking at how to do more roads, provide more in terms of water, make sure that other utilities are readily available. We are also reorganizing Kenya Power to make sure that it becomes much more efficient. We've brought in private sector into that space. And we are now having a conversation as Kenyans how, as industrialists come into Kenya, we can de-risk some of their investments. Like, for example, Gagan is asking us that as he puts this huge facility here that is going to employ 30,000 Kenyans, he wants Kenyan investors, Kenyan private sector people, Kenya government to be part of that investment. And I have undertaken to him that the government of Kenya, with our agencies, and we are going to encourage some of our companies, some of our pensions with patient money, to be able to invest so that together, Gagan and all the other industrialists who are coming here will know that we are not telling them to go where we don't want to go ourselves. We want to make sure that, as Orama said, they are helping us as a continent to inform the rest of the world that AfriExim is willing to put in their money. So those industrialists coming from outside Africa should invest. We are saying here in Kenya, we are putting our own money into the industrial opportunities we have, so that even as others put in their money, they can see our skin in the game. And therefore, then they can have the confidence that the government of Kenya and the people of Kenya and the private sector in Kenya is also part of this program. So, to answer your question directly, is that we have a predictable policy space backed by the law. Number two, we are ourselves investing in that space so that we are not leaving our investors alone, and we will then be as concerned as they are if there are any policy changes to be made. Because in that process, if it is going to affect them, then it is going to affect us. And therefore, we will be a lot more careful in how that space changes. And finally, is to tell the investors that are here, and I know many others that are listening to us elsewhere, that this is a space that you can be sure of. We are not in this for the short term. We are not in this out of a product of guesswork. We are on this as a plan. And with partners like AfriExim and good friends like Arise, I think we have partners that have a proven track record. And therefore, you should have confidence that we are going forward together.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. You provided me with the transition to ask a question to Professor Orama. What is AfriExim Bank's skin in the game as well from an equity perspective, mobilizing equity? The government has skin in the game from infrastructure, policy stability, but investments and convincing other Kenyan institutions to also invest. How can AfriExim Bank push to that direction, but also organize, Africa's pension funds and sovereign wealth funds? We have $4.5 trillion from pension funds, but also from wealthy individuals on the continent. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. So you are right. We have so much money in Africa, but we don't use them to help ourselves. If you look at the reserves, on the average, $300 to $500 billion in reserves. Where are they? They are all outside. In the banks that when you now go to borrow from them, they say you have high country risk. So they cannot lend your money back to you. The same thing with pension funds. We have rules that restrict how we use the money. So unlike other parts of the world, where pension funds are sources of patient capital, ours do not serve us as such. So what we've done in our AfriExim Bank is to create the Fund for Export Development in Africa, FEDA, which is the vehicle we've used to invest in Arise Integrated Industrial Platform. And I must thank His Excellency, President Ruto, and his government for Kenya's membership of that fund, because that then enabled us to be able to do some of these things, because it then made it possible for that fund to invest in these parks that we are talking about. But beyond that, we have under the FEDA platform an FEDA investment management, the work of that federal investment management is to work with federal capital and other federal platform to create funds. And one of the things we are about to launch is an industrialization fund. That industrialization fund will support investors that are in these industrial parks. We will be available and able to work with His Excellency President Ruto for the investments that Kenyans want to make in the textile plant and other companies, so that we put that under a fund, under a fund arrangement where Afreximbank will also put its own money through FEDA. That way, we're able to raise significant amount of money to bring here. And also, something we have done to make the projects successful is what we are doing to bring access to market to those who are investing. People produce to sell. They don't produce to consume what they produce. And there is a fantastic opportunity through the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So what we're saying is that when somebody invests here, the whole African market becomes their market. But I do not expect them to understand the market. So we do not think so that they will understand it immediately. So that is why we have also launched a trading company called the Africa Trade and Distribution Company. That trading company is owned by Afreximbank, the AFCFTA Secretariat, Arise, and Equitane. And what it does is helping to trade some of the products produced in the industrial parks. So when you produce here, your goods can go to Nigeria, go to Senegal, go to Egypt, because that trading company is able to take them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Orama. You talked about the AFCFTA. I'll use the opportunity to ask to Professor Lopez the question about Kenya's positioning to be the gateway for the AFCFTA. What's your opinion on that? Thank you.
Thank you. As someone that has been involved in the technical work for the establishment of the CFTA, and now a member of its advisory council, which, by the way, is meeting today in Cairo, but I gave preference to be with you, Mr. President. There are 5 dimensions of regional integration, and if we just look into trade without the other 4, it's not going to work. So we give a lot of importance to the trade dimension, which is absolutely correct, but without the other 4, it's not going to work. The other 4 are, we need macroeconomic integration, not to the extreme of having one single policy, but you need policy convergence. If you don't have policy convergence, you are going to have problems of foreign exchange, you are going to have problems of interoperability of the banks and all that. Some of the issues that, by the way, Afreximbank has tried to address, like the Pan-African payment system. The second that is also important is the productive integration, which is how you go cross-border to make sure that there is value chains that are going to operate in the real market, continental market. So for that, Kenya needs to be one of the propellers of this cross-border integration. And it's doing it in different ways already. So it can really boost its role in the CFTA precisely because it's already in that trajectory. And you can see it in different ways, on the digital, on the logistics, and different ways. Then you need a third element that is quite important as well, which is infrastructure integration. It's mostly logistics. Without the logistics, it's going to be very hard. And here, Arise has understood that for the success of this very large number of industrial parks, 13 countries, logistics becomes central. And without these logistics, we are not going far. And then the fourth one, and here really we have to salute Kenya again, is the free circulation of people. Because if you don't circulate within the continent, it's going to be very hard to do business. So by taking the decision, very courageous decision, to drop the visa requirements for Africans, we have one more element that Kenya is leading. So if you take the 5, in each one of them, Kenya has already put seeds, but it needs to use it much more. And that brings me to my second and last point. You know, for us to be successful in structural transformation, we need 3 ingredients. The first ingredient is ambition. Ambition is defined by making sure that you understand the megatrends, and there are 3 that are particularly important: demographics, the president said it, climate, and technology. If you don't understand them, you will not realize that things are moving extremely fast. And only when you get the real sense of this speed, you then position your strategy to be able to beat the ambition that makes sense. Once you have done that, you need the second ingredient. There will be a lot of things under the sun, but you need focus. And this focus is very difficult because the focus is going to demonstrate the windows of opportunity are very limited and very narrow. So it has to be very calibrated. This is where you will decide, for instance, that your value chains are going to be in competition with the world. And therefore, what is it that you are going to put that is differentiating to create the value that you are after? So that's focus, a lot of focus. And once you have done focus, you need the third ingredient, which is alignment. Because, you know, you can decide these are the 3 or 4 areas we are going to invest on. These are the ones that we are going to prioritize. But then it's a complete disarray between Ministry X, Ministry Y, different agencies, each one going its own way, bureaucracy, red tape. Things are not going to move. The only way it works is by making sure that coordination is not just a word that we use lightly, but rather coordination is about every single part of the government and key actors of the private sector are going to be elevating that focus into national priority.
Thank you very much, Professor Lopez. I will ask one last question to Gagan before handing over to Mr. President for his closing presidential reflections so that we can end the panel. Gagan, we heard that special economic zones can help Kenya be the gateway to the AFC FTA. But that's good. But what we want also is for special economic zones to be the gateway for the local community, for farmers, for small enterprises, micro enterprises, you know, to be their gateway for prosperity as well. What lessons can we learn from your experience in these 13 countries around Africa where ARISE is already? What can we do to make sure that SEZ enable what we call economic growth, but also job creation?
I think, Madhu, very important question. My belief is industrialization cannot happen just by foreign investors. Because when a foreign investor invests, when he makes money, he wants to take his money back and build a nice house in his home country. But if a Kenyan invests and he makes money, he will do more industry. So one key focus for us in any country that we go, including Kenya, is how do we bring more and more Kenyan investors to be in the industrial zone. And as President was talking, for example, in textile, we are saying how can we partner with Kenyan investors. So what we do is we run very specific programs to attract local investors to come and invest in the industrial zone. And that program can include co-investment with them by us. So imagine an investor has a good project, we evaluate it and we find it's good, we are happy to invest alongside with him. Then we also work with our partner banks, like President Orama said, with AfriExim, with AFC and others, to help them finance it, so that we are able to make sure that the local investors are getting equal opportunity. The second part that we clearly see is how do we integrate other industries. So for example, when you see textile industry coming up, you will need somebody to do button manufacturing, you will need somebody to do thread manufacturing, you will need somebody to do other ancillary manufacturing, like packaging material. So here is where we'll attract all the SME sectors to come and establish and provide them long-term offtakes so that they can also establish alongside. I think the third part which is important is you have to ingrain very small practices day to day. I'll give you a simple example. You know, if you go to our Benin industrial zone, we have about 25,000 people that come to work. One choice was we put up a large cafeteria for everybody to come and eat. Instead of doing that, we created a lot of stores for all the mothers to open small cafeterias. So we have over 200 small, mamas who have opened stores and can sell their food products. So our design of the industrial zone is from day one to ensure that we integrate SMEs. Lastly, we'll actually work with the Kenyan government, with the Afro-Exim Bank, to see if we can create a small diaspora fund. The idea being that diaspora can put in their money, and all the opportunities that come in the industrial zone, they have a choice to invest in those companies. This way we ensure that the SMEs progress and it's a impact round across and not just few companies. Thanks, Amal.
Thank you very much, Gagan. Mr. President, the last word for you, Excellency. Mr. President, what is your call to action for African governments, development finance institutions, the private sector, but also for the local communities? Call to action so that the special economic zones can become the backbone of Africa's industrial transformation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, my good friend, Mr. Holt. Listening to these good people here, I wish I had them every day to speak to the people of Kenya. Because what they're saying is music to my ears. It's what I keep, saying. Look at what Professor Orama has said about how do we mobilize domestic resources. Why is Afro-Exim Bank, a local bank? Local in the sense that it is African. It understands us better. They ask us less questions because they understand us. He's just said, we get our own money, we put it in some institutions out there. When you want to borrow that money from them, they tell you, you are a risky borrower. This is your money. It is okay for them to keep it, but it's not okay for them to lend it to you. That tells you we must have some local solutions. And it is, Professor, what I have been pushing in our country. We've had not a very good culture of savings. Our National Social Security Fund is among the smallest in our region. Now we have changed that. We are growing our pool of patient money, our pool of savings, our pool of money in our pension funds. Just in one pension fund, the National Social Security Fund, we have doubled in the last 2 years the money in that fund. And we will triple it by 2027. We'll have 1 trillion shillings in that fund. That is how we are going to create a pool of money which we can use for our own investment. Because I am told by economists, because I'm a scientist myself, that investment is a function of savings. If you have not saved nothing, you have nothing to invest. So we must start by savings. And I want to congratulate the people of Kenya. They have finally agreed that savings is a way for us to go. And it was what Professor Orama here was telling us, that we must build our own capacity to invest. And our own capacity to invest is built around how much savings we can put together. The call to action on that particular agenda is we need to do more around mobilizing domestic resources. Domestic resources for saving, domestic resources for investment. Look at what we have done with our housing program. We have mobilized resources, local resources. We didn't borrow from nobody. We have mobilized local resources. We are building 170,000 housing units 400 markets, 100 and another 72,000 hostel units in Kenya. All we have signed contracts of 600 billion, or let me put it, $4 billion of Kenyan money, which we have mobilized locally. So even as we look for solutions from elsewhere, we must know that there are solutions that are near us here. And I can say that about what we are doing in, we've mobilized about 300 billion shillings to deploy our health. Again, local money, local solutions. We've rolled that out. And as I listened to my good professor here, Lopez, he said three things: ambition, focus, alignment. You know, our ambition has been very small. You know, when you tell Kenyans we are going to build 200,000 houses, they say it is a lie. You know, when we came here last year and said we are going to put together a team that is going to unlock special economic zone in our region. And I remember when I had a meeting with Professor Orama in Mombasa last year, and we did announce $1 billion of investment in special economic zones in our country. $1 billion looks so much money. People are saying, no, this must not be true, because our ambition is small. So we are used to mediocrity. We are used to smallness. We must stop this smallness of mind and begin to think big and to think seriously. Look, today here, less than a year later, we have broken ground for an investment here, as has been said by these good people, beginning here, going to Dongo Kundu. Dongo Kundu will be there in a month and a half, and by February next year, we will be breaking ground in Naivasha. So, ambition, this is what this good Lopez is telling us. Let us raise our ambition. Let us stop thinking small. Let us stop thinking, oh, this is not possible, and this is not possible. We've had this for a long time. These are the usual stories. It is not the usual stories. And let's keep focus. You know, why are we, for example, why are we focused on textiles? Because we have identified some value chains, about 8 value chains in Kenya. We have, under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, we are focusing on 8 value chains. One of them is textiles. Textiles because we have a competitive advantage. We have a good human capital, and we can grow our own cotton. We've just handed over Rivertex. We signed the contract. We will shortly be handing over Rivertex to Arise. And they are bringing into that equation, you know, seedlings, working with farmers, so that we can grow our own cotton. So that even the factory we will be building here in Vipingo will use cotton from Kenya. That is the direction we want to take this. We are focusing on e-mobility. Why? Because therein lies value. We already have, just to mention one sector, 1.5 million almost border people in Kenya. Arise is beginning the production of e-bikes in Kenya right here in this region. Again, so that we can replace those borders which are using fuel with the ones that are using electricity. When I said that we will have motorbikes that will use electricity, you will not need to buy fuel. Many people say, oh no, how is that possible? You know, today we have motorbikes in Kenya that are using electricity. I was very happy last week to see one member of parliament, the member of parliament for Mwala, having gotten his own border people to buy 200 e-motorbikes for his constituency. That is the kind of thinking that we want to push into this space. We are focusing on leather. Why? Because we have the third largest herd of livestock in the continent. Therefore, we have the raw material. We can easily drive that, that space because we have the raw material, we have what it takes, and with investments like the ones that we are discussing here, we can drive it. Why are we focusing on digital jobs, BPO? It's because we have a tech-savvy young population, educated, speaking good English, people who can drive that space. Again, that is why we are thinking we are focusing on the BPO space, digital jobs. I'm just speaking to focus, you know, focus. So, so this is really when I'm listening to these good professionals, they're really speaking the language that I would all of us want to understand, that this is where we must be going. So special economic zones are instruments that we can use in this continent to do three fundamental things. Number one, we are a continent where many of our young people, they die in rickety, boats, trying to find jobs all over the place. We can create those jobs here in our continent. Number two, we have huge reserves of energy. I just came from Ethiopia last week. One dam producing 5,400 megawatts. We have many of those that we can replicate in Kenya. That energy pool, clean energy, we can not only profile ourselves as a place where there is abundant energy, but also renewable energy. And we can use it to decarbonize other industries anywhere in the world. We can proudly tell other industries wherever it is. And that is what I am telling the investors I met this morning. I met investors from Linglong, the biggest tire manufacturers globally. They are here in this conference. They want to set up camp in Kenya. A $200 billion company want to find its way into Kenya. We're telling them they cannot only produce out of Kenya because we have the human capital, we have the fiscal and infrastructure capacity, but we can also supply them with clean, green energy. And they cannot only supply for Kenya, they can be manufacturing out of Kenya for global value chain. We're telling the same to Foxconn. We just met again this morning, the largest technology manufacturer of technology phones and company. Again, they can manufacture out of Kenya. So we are saying that there is opportunity in our continent. You not only will help us create jobs, we have some of the best human capital. Number two, we have good energy. We are putting up good infrastructure. We are creating special economic zones. And much more importantly, Africa is going to be the place with the largest single market. So if you are looking for a good market for your products, you have had Africa Continental Free Trade Area and the infrastructure we are setting up around it to create one single market out of this continent, so that if you manufacture out of Vipingo or Dongokundu or Naivasha, your market is 1.4 billion people in this continent. And therefore, there cannot be a better place to set up your industry, your manufacturing facility. This is the place to do it. And speaking about logistics, you cannot get better logistics than what you have here in Mombasa. You have the port here in Mombasa, you have the port in Lamu, and you have everything in between. And we are setting up the infrastructure to connect this port by rail, by road, to the hinterland in our continent. So I am asking every investor, wherever they are, this is the place to set up camp, and we have all what it takes to make sure that your investment is not only safe, but it's also profitable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, dear panelists as well. Thank you for this brilliant panel, exciting panel. Please, let's put our hands together for a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Another round of applause for the panelists, and thank you for articulating those issues very, very clearly. And after such an engaging moment, let's take our seats kindly. Let's take our seats briefly. After such an engaging moment, there's not much to add, but allow me, Your Excellency, to invite the Governor, Kilifi, Honorable Mngaro, to just say thank you to all that have been in Kilifi this long, and also maybe to highlight areas in case you came with pounds, euros, and dollars, to ensure that you don't go back with them to your countries. Spend them here. Welcome, sir. After which you'll invite the Cabinet Secretary to invite His Excellency to officially pronounce the session closed. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, Cabinet Secretary present, Permanent Secretaries present, honorable members of Parliament present, distinguished guests, development partners, captains of industry, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, as we draw this transformative forum to a close, allow me to extend my profound gratitude to every delegate, partner, and leader who has contributed to its success. The conversations we have held here have not been routine, but are a motivation to laying a strong foundation for a new wave of investment and partnership across Kenya. Your Excellency, your presence and leadership today are a powerful endorsement of Kenya's commitment to being an investment-ready nation. You have sent a clear, resounding message to investors, both local and international, that Kenya is open, Kenya is prepared, and Kenya is determined to transform opportunities into lasting impact. For us in Kilifi, this forum carries a special significance. Not long ago, we convened our own International Investment Conference, and today, as we witness the launch of the Vipingo Special Economic Zone, we see the alignment between county ambition and national vision. Kilifi is proud to stand at the heart of this story, anchoring the coastal investment corridor and demonstrating what is possible when counties, the national government, the private sector, and development partners move in unison. But let us be clear, this is not the end. The true work begins once these doors close. The MOU signed, the commitments pledged, and the relationships forged here must be translated into tangible projects, sustainable jobs, and shared prosperity for our people. As counties, we are ready to work hand in hand with investors, and in Kilifi, we have built systems to ensure that partnerships are nurtured, fast-tracked, and supported from conception to completion. Distinguished guests, this forum has reaffirmed an essential truth that Kenya does not lack ambition, nor does it lack opportunities. What we need is precisely what we have witnessed here, mainly collaboration, clarity, and commitment. If we sustain this momentum, we will not only accelerate our nation's growth, but also redefine Africa's role in the global investment landscape. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, as we close, let us carry forward the spirit of this forum. Let us live not just inspired, but committed to act, to invest, and to build. Together, we can make Kenya the continent's premier destination for investment, and Kilifi stands ready to play its part. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, let me take also this opportunity to, I know we are concerned of time, I want to ask the political leaders that we'll have an opportunity after here, as the day with the President for us is long, we'll speak somewhere else. But allow me, Your Excellency, for me to acknowledge all the leaders who are present. I'll start with my colleague from Mombasa, Governor Abdul Samad Nasir. We'll have an opportunity later, Governor. You know where we are going is where we belong most, all of us here. So we'll have an opportunity to speak there. Gertrude Mbeyu, the County Member of Parliament for Kilifi. The Honorable Katana Paul, the Member of Parliament for Kaloleni. The Honorable Amina Munyazi, the Member for Malindi. The Honorable Kenga Mupe, the MP for Rabai, sorry. The MP, the Honorable Owen Baya, who is also the Deputy Part Leader of the majority in the National Assembly, and the MP for Kilifi North. The Honorable Mishi Mboko, and all the members from Kilifi County. Can you just raise your hands, the team from Kilifi County? Asanteni sana and karibuni sana Kilifi. And before you leave, please, you take your time, spend some, like the person who invited me here earlier said, we have a lot to do. And maybe you'll get a new idea for a new investment. So just hang around for a few days and spend a bit of money and enjoy the Kilifi hospitality. Let me take this opportunity, Your Excellency, to now invite the Minister for Industrialization, the Honorable Lee Kinyanjui, to speak and invite you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor Mungaro. Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief, President of the Afri-Exim Bank, all invited guests, my colleague, Cabinet Secretaries, and all leaders here present. Good afternoon. Allow me to take this opportunity first to thank the President for a well-dedicated time to articulate our industrial agenda. No country in the world ever developed by accident. Every country that ever developed had to think through, and some of the steps you have said here are part of that. I want to echo the words of one of the panelists here who also said that the structure of colonization made the colonies the source for raw materials. So deliberate was that structure that 60, 100 years later, we have remained loyal to that. So for us to break that, there must be dedicated thinking, both at the continent level, at the country level, and a conversation among leaders on how we can align. Your Excellency, I want to remind you of an experience we had with one of our industrialists in a place called Nyahururu. He fabricated a vehicle, innovated, and because it would go on the road, he went to register it with our KRA. But the first document he was asked is the import bill, because it was not anticipated that a vehicle would be made in Kenya. So the structure that made or reduced Africa to be just a producer of roti, roads, who believe in the continent and who know that for us to stop the migration of our young people across the Mediterranean, something must be done here. Lastly, I want to congratulate our governors, Mungaro and Mombasa Sheriff, for being responsive to the investors we have sent here, including yourself, processing all the necessary documentation, compliance, and all that.
Another round of applause for CS. And with that, we will end with the national anthem. But before that, Your Excellency.